Welcome back, everyone. This is Zach Edwards for another episode of the Adventure Box podcast. That's right. Today we're going to be talking about the real change. This is when it really starts to happen. It's called the Declaration of Independence. But before that, we're going to go through someone that's very important to the cause, for the rebellion, for the revolution, for the Sons of Liberty, everything. To get the people actually to move, they have to be motivated. In order to motivate them, people need to know what is happening. And so there's a lot of different things that are happening. Pamphlets, which could be filled with propaganda or something else. But pamphlets, newsletters, they don't really have newspapers that they could actually, they have newsletters, basically. Those are the news that they have at that point. So there's one man. His name is Thomas Paine. You ever heard of him? He's a pain in the neck of the British. So Thomas Paine, let me start from the beginning. He first off wanted to be actually, he didn't know what he wanted to be. He was a little at loss on what he wanted to do. So in his early life, he was born January 29th, 8 days after my birthday, 1737. Okay, few hundred years before my birthday. In England. So the first off, his father, Joseph Paine, was a Quaker and a corset maker. Do you know what a corset is? A corset is, the women have really thin waists down in the colonial times. They didn't really have, a lot of times they didn't have thin waists. They had these devices that would cling onto them and shrink their waists. Yeah, and it got very painful, and a lot of times it was very unhealthy. They even have corsets now, but it's not like it used to be, because they would have laces like shoes. And you know how you try to tighten your shoes by pulling on the laces to tighten all the laces together? Well, these are the same thing on the corsets, where they pull the laces in order to make you look skinnier. Yes, skinnier. Oh yeah, you can barely talk. I can't even eat because try to get food down into a stomach that's like pulled together. Not gonna happen. Okay, so his father was a corset maker. He was a Quaker, and so they were, let's see, from an Anglican family, so an English family. Now he grew up in very modest circumstance, and he did have early education, but that was limited of what he could have. He attended a grammar school at age 13, and when he left to apprentice under his father as what's called a staymaker. Staymaker is the corset maker. Okay, so Paine has basically little direction in his life of what he's actually going to do. His father wants him to follow after his footsteps, but he's not quite sure that's what he wants to do. So, because of this, he decides to go off and do different things. So despite his father's desire for him to pick up the family trade, Paine was relentless and unsatisfied, and so he moved on. And so he did other things, but he really did not have much to do. He went through a lot of personal loss, dissatisfaction with careers. So he gets into two different things that were very notable. He tries teaching. Not satisfying to him. He didn't want to teach, and so he went to tax collecting. Well, the tax collectors, interesting enough, even though they're tax collectors, they're getting all this money, they don't get much of that money for themselves. He actually wrote up a pamphlet, his first pamphlet, called The Case of the Officers of Excise. Okay? These people that are being taxed and then being collected by the excise tax collectors, they don't have much pity for you. So he puts out this pamphlet, and nobody wants to pay for it. He's asking for better pay and better working conditions. Nobody wants to hear the moaning and complaining from a tax collector. So that doesn't work out for him. So he fails in that, and he basically leaves that profession. Well, then something happens. In 1774, he meets someone very significant. His name is Benjamin Franklin. He meets him in London. Now remember, Benjamin Franklin's from the U.S. Franklin already is a prominent figure in both England and the colonies. This is before the war starts. So Benjamin Franklin can roam freely. He's a British soldier, a British citizen. So Paine starts to converse with him and starts to become very understanding of the things of Franklin's understanding. And so Paine leaves England and arrives in Philadelphia in late 1774. So he leaves for the American colonies, and this is a turning point, a breaking point for him. The colonies are reeling in the effects of the coercive acts. Remember, the punishment acts for the Boston Tea Party and all the other tea parties that were happening. So he decides to jump into journalism, jump into making pamphlets again. So upon arriving, Paine quickly found work as a writer and the editor for the Pennsylvania Magazine. The Pennsylvania Magazine, he wrote various topics and such. And so this is when he actually creates, was one other thing, key figure in the American independence movement included Benjamin Rush, who he actually gets also, Paine gets influenced by him as well. So now he comes up with this idea, I want to write this pamphlet. I want to write this book. It's a really short book, but I want to write this thing that will change America. And we'll go out to all these people and get complete admiration for. So Paine puts together his thoughts on independence, collected with the thoughts of Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Rush, and such. And so he puts together this, and he puts it out in late 1775. Now remember what happened in 1775? The Battle of Lexington and Concord. He picked the right moment to write this pamphlet. And remember, these pamphlets are not written on a computer. They're not typed out. They're not even handwritten and be able to make copies of them. No. These have to be handwritten and then put it through a printing press in order to print the pamphlets or the booklets so you can pass them out. And you don't just pass them out at this point. These kind of booklets you sell because you need to recoup the cost of making these pamphlets. So he creates this book called Common Sense, which is again about common sense. And this is deeply personal to him. He publishes it in 1776. That's when it actually finally comes out. So Common Sense comes out. He sells over 100,000 copies in the colonies. Now, this is just after, so it's ready to go 1775. It's published and ready to sell in 1776. Now, the cost to us would be very nominal. It'd be like a penny or 5 cents. But to them, it was like a day's worth of work, maybe a half day's work of work. And so he goes around and sells this with opinions, his own opinions, but it shifts public opinions. So this book, Common Sense, starts to make very important changes in the way that people think about the colonies. It does a few things. These are the key points in Common Sense. One, it's inevitable to work for independence. It's coming. You can't fight it. You can fight it, but it's still coming. Second, the critique on monarchs and hereditary rule. Hereditary rule. So these are basically who rules who. Do the people rule? Do the monarchs rule? Do the rulers rule in the parliament? Do they rule the people in the colonies? This was something very important to establish. The advantages of independence. Another thing that this spoke out about. But what it really did, the most important thing that it did is number 4. Number 4 is a vision for a republic government. And this is why people bought it. They were feeling this. They wanted to hear what other people said about it, and reading about it makes it feel official. So he puts this out. He puts out 100,000 copies. First time around, sells them out within a few months. So this publication goes out everywhere, which also puts a bullseye on his head. The British are not quite happy with this Common Sense. So the colonies, during the American Revolution, it started. The American Revolution has basically started. And so because of that, this pamphlet makes all the difference. Okay. There's a lot more you're going to see in this chapter, in this chapter of the curriculum. Benjamin Franklin, you're going to learn about him and his early years, and meeting up with Thomas Paine and other influential people in both the U.S. and Great Britain. Well, okay, it wasn't the U.S., in the colonies and Great Britain. You're going to see all the other things that were happening, including the 7 Years' War. So this is the aftermath. This curriculum actually talks about the aftermath and how it influences the colonies. Of course, it does. The French Enlightenment, all these different things. Okay, so skipping past the activities and such, we're going to go into the next part that's very important. Another pamphlet. This one's not exactly a pamphlet. Another printed material. This one is the most significant document in all of U.S. history, minus the Constitution itself. Can you think about it? Which one would you say would be the most consequential, the most important document that's ever been written for the United States outside of the Constitution? It's basically a large pamphlet, and it is actually a letter to the king. This is the Declaration of Independence. America, the colonies, are calling for their independence. They are done with the British crown, and they want out. They want out, and they're not going to take any other way out of it. This means war. So the Declaration of Independence has a lot of different parts of it. You're going to have to read it. There's also the steps of actually how they wrote it. It's also very important. So they debated about it. This is the Second Continental Congress. It's still meeting, May 1775, and they're still talking about it. And this is where they get into starting to talk about writing a Declaration of Independence. Now, the Declaration of Independence has one key phrase that everyone needs to know, because this is what the United States stands on. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all mankind, all men and women, men in this time, men and women, human, are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator," so God, again, Catholics, Protestants, every single sect of Christianity, but also Judaism, and also, there's a very small amount, but they're here, Muslim, all religious people, their Creator. So, let's see, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. This means rights for everyone who lives here. That among these are life, liberty, and property. Oh, wait a second. No, that was what it was going to say. Then they changed it. That was back with Locke. John Locke. He was the economist, philosopher, who basically said those are the three things: life, liberty, property. But because they wanted to make it so that everyone agreed on it, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because what was property this time? Well, things like slavery. And so they didn't want it to be part of the Declaration. So they didn't. That's one of the major key phrases in the Declaration of Independence. So this is actually like Jefferson's document. So there are actually, you're going to have to go through, there's a lot of different steps of how they came to this document. But Thomas Jefferson was one of the initial writers of this. And so let me read another consequential phrase from the Declaration of Independence. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Remember the phrase, taxation without representation. The people in the colonies were being taxed, but they were not being represented. So consent of the governed. It's the governed that allows the rulers, the leaders, to be in control. Another one. This one's interesting too. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government. Wait a minute. So if the British government is not sitting by the rules that they've agreed upon, or at least the colonists agreed upon, British are outside the country, they're not actually part of it, then they can put a new government in. Now, the United States, inside the United States now, this does not apply. Because it says this, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, so life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the rights of the people, to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. Now, if the U.S. government took away your freedoms, your liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then the Declaration of Independence says it's time for new government. Have we gotten that far? I don't think so. Okay, have we come close to it at times? Yeah, probably. That's what we're going over. I'm going to share every single one of those times as we go through. I might miss some. Email me. Put in the comments below if I forget to mention something. We go through everything from the birth of the nation, the melting pot, the War of 1812. We cover everything throughout this year. Okay, what else? The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations. Yes. All having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. In other words, King George, you're out. You have no control over us. We are done with you. Basically what it meant. Okay, last one. I'll do this fun fast. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, amended appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world, God, for the restitude of our intentions, do in the name and the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. What? Mic drop there? No, totally. That would be a complete mic drop, because you're basically saying, sorry, King, you're out. We are now independent. We don't care what you say, and we will fight you to the death. The thing is, how many people actually agree with this? So, remember when we were talking on Monday, 19,000 troops teamed up with George Washington. How many people were in the colonies? Split that by half. Let's say 300, 400, 500,000 people. Break that in half. 250,000. Okay, break that in half, because that's about basically female, male. Break that in half. Children and adults. So about 175,000 should be in the Continental Army, if accepted, if they're able to be trained that way. They're not. Of course, there are militias, people that are in the militias instead of the Continental Congress. A lot of these people are just living their lives normal. Even when the war starts, yes, they have to make changes and do things that they wouldn't usually do. But the fact is, they're not signing up. Common sense was there to help spur the movement, and they did. Common sense pushed people to join the Continental Army. The Declaration of Independence did it even better. The Declaration of Independence said, we're going to fight you. And in order to fight you, the people knew we had to join up and become part of the cause. So that's what they did. They joined up and were part of the cause. Now, congressional debate. During the same time that they're writing the Declaration of Independence, slavery was actually part of the discussion. But in order to keep the colonies together, to create this independent state, they had to push that off to another time. So yes, Jefferson's original document for the Declaration of Independence included slavery. But they just couldn't pass it. Not if they're going to keep all the colonies together. So they signed the Declaration of Independence and they sent it off. They sent it to England. Which, could you imagine being the delivery of this document? I'd be hoping my head wouldn't be chopped off. Yeah, kings in England are notorious for lopping off heads, or burning them at the stake, or whatever else you want to say when it comes to death by things they don't like. But this was actually a big part because, let's see, the draft had been prepared in committee and then appointed on June 11th, including Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Roger Livingston. So, by June 28th, the draft is presented to everyone. By June 30th, 2 days later, the colonies finalize their positions. July 1st, 1776, the debate on independence begins. July 2nd, the resolution of independence is approved. Wow, what is that? 1 day? Holy cow, look at our Congress. Our Congress can't do anything in a day. It has to go through all these different committees and such. And then finally it might come back to us weeks or months or even years later. July 2nd, the resolution for independence is approved. July 3rd through the 4th, final revisions to the Declaration. July 4th, 1776, what happens? The signing of the Declaration of Independence. Now, this is really interesting because there is a crucial vote. And there's a story in here. You'll actually be able to read the story of what was happening to him. He had to take a midnight ride. His face was disformed. He had a hard time getting there in time, but he knew how important it was that he voted for the Declaration of Independence because it was on a hairline fracture at this point. So he raced all night to get there. His name, just so you have it, is Caesar Rodney. Yes, there is a historical conquest card about him. But he goes to sign it. You know what I love? I love. The biggest signature on the Declaration of Independence. Do you remember which one that is? Do you know who that is? Let's see what I have in here from him. There it is. On July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was officially adopted by the Continental Congress. John Hancock, the president of the Congress, was the first to sign the document. He did so with a flourish, leaving a large, bold signature, famously remarking, "There, I guess King George will be able to read that without his spectacles." And why did he do it? Because remember, only a year before, Lexington and Concord, Adams, Hancock, they were in Lexington. The British troops left Boston to go capture them, and the armaments. They had to run out of there at midnight to get away from the king. John Hancock, he didn't care a bit anymore. Sign me up. Splatter my name everywhere. I don't care. I'm against this king. I don't like him. I don't like him one bit. And so he took him on with the largest signature on the Declaration of Independence. So next time you see the Declaration of Independence, look for that one name. It's bold. I've seen it plenty of times, and it is right there for everyone to see. And again, you're going to see a whole bunch of other things coming in here. But Monday, we're going to go through the Philadelphia campaign. Actually, you know what? I'm going to read it right now. This is going to be part of today's. I wasn't planning on it, but we still have 6 minutes. Let's see what I can get with the Philadelphia campaign. Now, this is very important. Because remember, where was this all being signed? It was being signed in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia campaign is where the British tried to take over Philadelphia. Oh, wait a second. They do take over Philadelphia. Ooh. Okay, so I can't wait. Okay, so the end of the New York and New Jersey campaign is around 1776 to 1777. By 1777, it's basically solidified. The British are in their stronghold in New York. The colonists are in their stronghold in Philadelphia and such. So, Trenton and Princeton, they're holding up in these two places. Despite these wins, the Washington's army is still outnumbered and undersupplied. So, this is what's really important. So you have the British plans to take Philadelphia. This is their major campaign. They know what's going on in Philadelphia. They cannot let it go that Philadelphia is signing a Declaration of Independence, trying to kick them out. Okay, so remember, wait. We're going to go a little bit back. Remember that 1777 is when they took when Washington fought 2 battles in Trenton to take Trenton and then took Princeton the next day. So that is 1777. 1776 is when the Declaration of Independence is signed. So everyone knows at this point. So they're coming down to Philadelphia to take them. So General Howe, again, trying to target over Washington, couldn't reach him. Now he's going off after all the other leaders. So at this point, the British spies have already told him in July of 1777. So this is the summer right after Princeton and Trenton fall. He embarks on a very complex strategy. Rather than marching his troops directly overland through New Jersey into Philadelphia, which would be going right through Washington's troops, he takes 18,000 troops and sails them from New York down to Maryland. And they march north, going up into Pennsylvania. So let's show you a map. Again, if you're listening to the podcast, don't worry about it. We're just showing a map of the East Coast. And I'm showing where they come from, but I will describe it. So they leave Boston. So they're basically right here, in this area right here. Leave New York. They leave New York. They float down south, down, into Maryland, and come up here in this harbor. They come up through the Delaware River. At this point, they have to offboard. They have to get up, and they have to start hiking. So this is where Philadelphia is compared to where they come out. So somewhere down here. Okay. So now they are marching to Philadelphia. They go into Chesapeake Bay, which is this bay right here. Delaware River, but it's Chesapeake Bay. Okay. And they start, wait. Or is it? No, that's Chesapeake Bay. I knew that. Sorry, this is Chesapeake Bay. And they start marching up. Wait a second. Why did they hit Washington? Because Washington was not an important city at that point. So they march up from here towards Philadelphia. They have to get low enough because they know that there are troops guarding Philadelphia. They're just guarding there just out of normal circumstances. But when the troops leave New York and the colonists hear that they are down in Chesapeake Bay coming up, that's when they start organizing. Now remember, you have Princeton right here. This is where Washington is. Philadelphia is here. Chesapeake Bay right there. Philadelphia is right in the middle of Princeton and Chesapeake Bay. Well, a little bit higher. Would have actually been smart if they came up the Delaware River, but they didn't. And that was probably because that was secure too by other U.S. ships. So they start marching up. Now, at some point, they meet up with a militia. This is it's Brandywine. So let's see, Brandywine, Maryland. Okay, so there's Washington, there's Brandywine. This is where the first battle happens. So they offload here, and there's this group of militia that come in and attack. So this is... Nope, actually I'm wrong. It wasn't militia. It was the Continental Army with militia. Oh yeah. So George Washington is well above. They're not going to make it. So let's see. This. So okay. So you have General Howe, his fleet go from Maryland, and they start coming up. Now this is where Brandywine is, and probably a little bit east of there. The British come out of Chesapeake Bay, it's out of here, and they start climbing. They come through Brandywine, and that's where the first battle begins. The first battle for this campaign on Philadelphia. Well, Washington had troops down there, about 14,000 troops. So, all of a sudden, the British meet these troops and start attacking. Excuse me. Actually, at this point, Washington does arrive in this location. So, but he believes that his main assault. Let's see if they still have these places. Okay, so the first assault, George Washington thinks that he's going to be attacking Chad's Ford. So let's say Chaps Ford. Yes, Chad's Ford. Chad's Ford. There you go, Pennsylvania. Go. Okay. So after coming through Brandywine, he thinks that and crossing Brandywine, I think these areas are a little bit off from what they were called at the time. Okay, so at this point, September 11th, on the morning of September 11th, the troops begin to cannonade against the American forts at Chad's Ford. Now, Chad's Ford, again, where was it? Let's go back there. Chad's Ford. Okay. There is a river here. Chad's Ford was trying to get over this river. There you go. Brandywine Creek. That's why it is. Okay, Brandywine Creek. Chad's Ford. That's a sweep. This is the river that the British are trying to cross. George Washington believes that they're going to come through Chad Ford. And actually, Howe sends his larger force around that and comes up. It's both British and Hessian. And they march north up to Brandywine at Jeffress Ford. Let's find out where Jeffress Ford is. Jeffress. Jeffress? Yeah, I think that's the way it's spelled. Jeffress. I should look this up before. Jeffress Ford. I don't know if it actually says it anymore. Jeffress Ford. Okay, let's see if either of these are them. Come on. Okay, Jeffress Ford. Where is Jeffress Ford? That's totally... Oh, no, there it is. Okay. So this is the same river. There's Brandywine. So you had Chad's Ford down here. Jeffress Ford up here. Washington is over here, thinking that his troops are going to stop the British over here. But the larger group actually comes above and then comes down and attacks. Okay, so the defense at Chad's Ford falls, and that's when the troops start to run. They start getting out of there. This was actually... I'm not going to go after some names. Okay, General Nathaniel Greene is the one. As Sullivan's right flank collapses, this is the U.S., they launch a renewed assault on Chad's Ford with the Americans' right flank in retreat. Washington was forced to redeploy his remaining forces to try to hold the line. General Greene moves his division to cover the retreat and slow down the British advance. So George Washington's men are running back. General Greene goes in there to slow down the British as this group is leaving. Because what a flank is say you're attacking here. Well, another group comes around and attacks from above. That's a left flank, right flank, coming from another side. And all of a sudden you're being attacked on basically both two sides. The only way to end it is to retreat, to move back, because these two are colliding in this one area. You need to move back so you can regather your troops and come back. The problem is that when you retreat, you lose ground and they continue going forward. As they move forward, they get more momentum and push you back. So at this point, they've basically lost the Battle of Brandywine. And the troops, the British troops, continue marching and basically take over Philadelphia without much of a fight. The troops are not in Philadelphia. The troops are out in the battlefield trying to fight. So they take the city of freedom and liberty, which is Philadelphia. So this is basically how they're able to take on Philadelphia. Now, all the Second Continental Congress are out of there. They're out of there right now anyways because 1777 and 1776 is when they signed the Declaration of Independence. They basically moved out, but there's a lot of the organization of the Congress, of the Continental Army, everything was happening in Philadelphia. Well, when they found out the British were coming and there's no way of stopping them, they moved north. Now, in here, there's a lot more battles. I'm not going to go through all the small battles, but read the Battle of Germantown. That's a great one. So you have the Battle of Germantown. And then in here, in a lot of these battles, there's people on both sides. They're just following orders. You might, if you're in war, you might hate or dislike a certain person that's on the opposite side of you in battle. But most of the time, they're normal people that are just following orders. So for that reason, we have two memorials in here. One of General Adam Stevens, who dies at the Battle of Brandywine, and also Brigadier General Francis Nash, who dies in Germantown. Read about them. Learn about them. They are normal human beings just following orders from the commanding officers. So I'm ending it there. That is the story of the Philadelphia campaign. And now you know two very important parts. Again, Monday we talked about Quebec and Canada, and then New York. Now we've learned about the fight on Philadelphia. But stay tuned. What's next? The next thing, again, I'm looking at my curriculum. If you haven't figured it out, I've been looking down at my curriculum the whole time. Just instead of writing down my notes, I took notes in this book here. And so in this book, the next part to learn about is the Battle of Saratoga. Actually, you know what? We're going to go straight to the French entering the war and the winter camps at Valley Forge. These are essential to learn about. But we're going to learn about that, and we're probably going to learn about these spies as well. Woo! British spies? No. Colonial spies. The Washington Culper spy ring. Yeah. So that's what we're going to be learning about next week. We're also going to be learning about the battles of Stony Brook, the Southern Campaign, and the British Southern Campaign. We're going to talk about basically the end of the war. So this is very important. Stay tuned for that. Can't wait to tell you more. Have a great day. And yeah, this is, by learning this, you're able to learn why we fight for our independence. We fight for freedom and liberty. Sometimes we fight for other people's freedom and liberty. But ultimately, our people in the colonies spilt their blood so we could have the freedom that we have right now. Again, that's another reason why we learn about history. We learn history because it's all the sacrifice that everyone else gave us, and we need to be able to push that because so much blood has been spilt already. We don't need to spill it again. Learn from the lessons of history and keep moving forward. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.